So every case of clinical milk fever that you get, you could have 8 to 10 more cows with subclinical milk fever. If you haven't, it's much harder to get the cows out if you have to prepare on the day that you want to leave them out.
Today I'm joined by Padraig O'Connor, dairy technician in Teagasc, Grange, to discuss some timely tips for managing through February. I started by asking Padraig to tell me about the concept of the fresh cow group.
If you can separate those freshly calved cows, it's massive in terms of, I suppose, even from a couple of practical points. One is, colostrum management. You can milk those, you can milk them last. I suppose the other thing is you can give them a little more time as well when they're in one group. If there's anything wrong with them, you can observe them a little bit better. Maybe in the event of they getting milk fever, maybe you have them in a straw shed. So I suppose the other thing is that when you have those cows in a fresh mob like that, you can actually make sure that they are maybe getting their full belly full of silage or whatever like that. So it's easy for them to feed and get a full intake plus water as well. So I suppose there's lots of advantages there in terms of managing those from the farmer's point of view, and also managing the cows as well. It gives them a little bit of time to adjust after calving, I would say. Because look, at their after calving, it's a fairly traumatic experience for the cow or the heifer. So if you can give them a little bit of time, in my mind, it's massive anyhow.
Yeah, and you mentioned the heifers there, Padraig, as well now. Depending on who you listen to, there's various recommendations about mixing cows and heifers before calving and after calving and so forth. But I think it's actually a great way of giving the heifers a chance to go into that group as they calve. Now, I know in a lot of cases people have a lot of synchronizing done and a lot of heifers calve together and so forth anyway, but there'll always be some intermingling between heifers and cows, and kind of gives them a chance to find their way in that group before they join a main group then, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And they have maybe a more available space. There's less bullying going on as well. So I think, you have to introduce the heifer sometime. Whether it's before calving or after calving. So I think maybe just after calving, and you have a transition group of a transition mob, or a fresh mob. It just gives the heifer, as you say, a little more time to adjust. And it's really the adjustment that you're looking at there, Stuart.
Yeah, and then Padraig, I suppose, help is a scarce enough commodity, and is especially scarce at this time of the year when there's lots on. So you were making the point there about milking them either first or last, but depending on what situation suits. And you could actually have more people in the parlour for that group to help, as you said, with the observation and the whole management piece of it. And probably makes it a lot easier now. Not every parlour has a dump line and so forth, but all that milk can go into one vat or whatever way you want to collect the milk for calves or whatever like that. And huge advantages to that as opposed to trying to pick out 2 cows in every row that come in and all of this kind of stuff, really, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And through experience, I have done it both ways, but for me, if you can have that, the cows after calving in a bunch, you can relax a little bit. As you say, you can get that extra help into the parlour as well. You have, it just makes life much easier, to be honest about it.
Okay, so Padraig, then one of the other things that we've talked about as being maybe useful tips for people in the next couple of weeks is the testing of the colostrum, we'll say, as well, so that we'll assume that they'll listen to what we're saying and they'll have their fresh cow group and they'll take their second beastings or their colostrum from the freshly calved cows and so forth. And it's very important to test that, Padraig, from a number of levels, really, I suppose. So I suppose where's the big advantage in testing the colostrum? Well, I suppose first of all, I'll ask you, maybe can you just give a quick description of how you do it? Is it something that's difficult? Is it time consuming? And I suppose the value that comes from it then?
It's very simple to do. All you need is a refractometer, and you can get that online for 20 or 30 euro. All you do is put a couple of drops on the refractometer. It gives out a reading, and the reading should be, if it's good colostrum, Stuart, it should be over 22%. So very easy to do. It doesn't, a couple of minutes will actually do it. So I think it's invaluable to have that knowledge. I suppose from the point of view of if the calves get sick later in life, at least you know that the quality of colostrum that actually the calves got. You know what I mean? So for me, it's a no-brainer. Have a refractometer there, and test. Test a good number of cows and the heifers as well. So it's really key, I think, to your whole calf management point of view in terms of what quality of colostrum that the calves are getting.
The advantage of that then is that once it's over the 22%, it has a real kick in terms of the transferring immunity onto it, whereas when it's less than the 22, the risk is that the passive transfer that they talk about won't actually occur, which will leave the calf more vulnerable to becoming sick in the maybe in the immediate short term and in the longer term as well. So I suppose, Padraig, just on that, what does it do in terms of, is it a good use of time from a dietary assessment as well now? And we're not promoting kind of freshening diets or anything like that, but just will say it can, being silage in Ireland, I think can vary from year to year. So what you did last year might necessarily, even though it might be from the same fields and kind of cut around the same time and everything, the weather being the way the weather is, the silage quality can vary significantly. And can that impact on the results that you'll get from the Brix test?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So first of all, you're determining the quality of the colostrum, and I suppose the second part to that is, Stuart, if the colostrum quality is low, you ought to look at the diet, and maybe what some farmers do as a quick fix would be maybe to feed a half a kg of soybean meal to the animals maybe a week or 2 weeks before they calve down, and that seems to have a fairly immediate effect in terms of getting that quality of colostrum to a better stage or to a better percentage. So that's something. Look at the diet of the dry cow is so important from many points of view, but certainly we're talking about colostrum now. So colostrum quality is so important from the calves' point of view. So it's really important to test it. If it's testing okay, happy days. If it's not, you need to look at the dry cow diet. And as I said, maybe a half a kg of soybean meal, to the cows that are fairly close to calving, can be a game changer, Stuart.
Very good, Padraig. And you mentioned the whole nutrition piece there, I suppose. And I was just saying to you earlier that there seems to be a little bit of too good a nutrition, maybe potentially over the last winter. And cows are actually in quite good condition. And I was talking to one of the vets locally there the other evening, and he was saying that they're coming across quite a bit of milk fever in cows. So what would you say to people that are experiencing that now? Now, it may be just the cows at the start of calving are subject to it because maybe they haven't enough minerals got or something like that. But we'll say, what's your comment? You'd condition score cows from time to time, and you regularly find that cows can be quite way better than people often think they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And one comment that I'll actually make, Stuart, is when the farmer is looking at their cows daily, they don't see that incremental change in the cows. You know what I mean? So funny you should say that. Cows are in good condition this year. I was in 2 or 3 herds there recently myself, and I spotted the same. That there was a good number of cows with quite fleshy, to be quite honest with you. You know what I mean? So I suppose, and the big risk with that is milk fever. So I suppose, and look, with milk fever, I will always say about milk fever, it's a kind of a gateway disease as well. So really, prevention is key here. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose going back again, we mentioned it with the colostrum, going back to the dry cow diet. It's really important. You mentioned it yourself, dry cow minerals, but dry cow minerals that are actually in spec with the right amount of magnesium in that dry cow mineral. It's really key. I suppose if you have overconditioned cows, Stuart, and it's something that I always found hard to deal with. If you had overconditioned cows, it's trying to, I suppose, maybe reduce or maybe reduce their silage intake a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So one has to be careful about that as well. Maybe adding a little bit of straw in for that purpose. Just to reduce the intake a little bit because of the fact they're overconditioned. So yeah, look, it's a tricky one. But I'd go back first and making sure that the dry cow mineral is in spec. Magnesium is really so important in relation to milk fever. And I suppose if you have, and again, one has to be practical as well. Look, you mightn't be able to restrict the cows that easily in terms of maybe feeding the silage, but you have to do the best you can, I suppose, within the facilities that you have as well. I suppose milk fever, the impact for me, milk fever has, the animals, if they get milk fever, they're 3 times more likely to have a slow calving. They're three times more likely maybe to hold on to the cleanings, and they're 10 times more likely, to get mastitis because it affects the muscles as well. You know what I mean? So it's really a gateway disease to a lot more other stuff as well, Stuart. So I suppose prevention is key there, and I would go back to the dry cow diet and the dry cow minerals particularly.
Yeah, and I suppose there's the option maybe of the meg flakes in the water and stuff like that if people are experiencing a really
Yes.
quick fixes. But ideally, we don't want to be in that scenario. We should be trying to head it off at the pass, as you said there. And I suppose, Padraig, as well, the other concern with restriction then is that actually you're reducing the level of energy that the cow is consuming as well. So we'll say, I suppose it's important that people probably, if the ship has sailed and the cows are fat now, there isn't a whole lot you can do from the point of view of restricting them at this stage. Just to be conscious maybe for the later calver. So from, we'll say maybe anything that's left to calve from mid-March on, or even from March on, that they would be maybe managed as you have suggested there, with kind of keeping, maybe letting them run out of silage for a few hours, we'll say, before they're fed again, rather than having constant ad lib access to silage.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We're not talking about starving the cows by any manner of means, but yeah, that's a very, very good point. Like if they're close to calving now, there's not a lot you can do about it, but it's maybe for the later calvers, and just to manage those appropriately, Stuart. Yes.
Yeah, so talk to your vet, I suppose, about managing the close-up ones, the ones that are going to calve in the next couple of days if they are on the fat side. So what options are there? Maybe, as I said, the meg flakes in the water, maybe the use of boluses and so forth.
Exactly.
To try and just prevent them, as it's so important what you said there, Padraig, about it, the fact that it is a gateway disease. It opens so many bad doors, basically trap doors, effectively, for a cow. And quite likely, if people keep good records and they do look back at the end of the year to see what's empty, it can quite often be tagged on to the cows that got the milk fever. And I suppose the other thing is too, Padraig, that those clinical milk fevers are maybe only a tip of the iceberg. They call it an iceberg disease, actually, very similar to the iceberg, that the majority of it that you see isn't actually above the surface at all. It's actually below the surface. So there could be a lot of milk fever in the herd, but it could be just subclinical.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point, which I didn't mention. So every case of clinical milk fever that you get, you could have 8 to 10 more cows with subclinical milk fever, Stuart. And I suppose that's the frightening part about it. If you only had to deal with the cows that got milk fever, clinical milk fever, that was one thing. But because of the fact that you're talking about subclinical milk fever and that you can't see that, and the impact that has on production, the impact that has on fertility going forward is massive as well. So yeah, look, it's for me, the milk fever one is a massive one. Do you know what I mean? If you can get that right, and again, it's going back to the dry cow period, I harp on about it. It's going back. And I suppose trying to get those cows in the proper body condition. I suppose we talk about body condition score between 3 and 3.5, and I suppose the optimum 3.25, calving down at. Do you know what I mean? That's key. That's really important. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so last thing then, Padraig, I suppose, is John Maher will probably pick up on it on Thursday in the grass podcast anyway, but the importance of getting grass into cows, we'll say, and it might sound ludicrous to be talking about it, I'd say fully housed diet in a lot of cases, and definitely up along the east coast anyway at the moment, after all the rain and what Storm Chandra brought last week. So just, I suppose, like a few tips for people in terms of dealing with the weather at the minute now. Obviously everything is indoors, the opportunities are limited, but we're moving into the year, and that's always a positive, I suppose. The day length is increasing, so the chances to go grazing might come sooner than people might think.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Stuart. It's, while you look out the window, you look out at the shed at the minute, you say, it's the last thing probably on farmers' minds. And I get that, but look, it's amazing, how quickly things can change at this time of the year with day length, with good drying conditions. Please God, we'll get those, as we go forward. So it's amazing, how quickly things can turn around. That's the first point I'll make. I suppose the second thing is that get out on some of the drier paddocks to see how dry they are, how wet they are. That's a key for me as well. It's you don't know how wet or dry the land is standing in the yard. So that's key. I suppose, like getting grass into cows, it will certainly reduce cost. It'll reduce the concentrate cost particularly. And production, particularly protein percentage will raise as well. So look at, I suppose the key here is, the weather is bad now. Things could and will hopefully change fairly quickly. So don't be behind the curve there. Just make sure that that you watch it. You maybe get out there and walk a couple of the drier paddocks to see how dry or how wet it is. I think that's key, Stuart.
Okay, and Padraig, I suppose is there merit maybe in if depending on the forecast that you see, if the week is looking good, that you could actually have a break set up, and all you'd have to decide is whether they were going out or not. So you wouldn't actually have to go if you got a bit of time to put up the fence for the 3 hour break, because that's what it's going to be now, because as we said, we've a lot of rain got, so if the opportunity comes, it won't be that they'll be staying out all day, they'll be going out for a few hours, but you could be set up ready to go, that you can fly down in the quad or whatever, and or drive down carefully, I suppose we better say,
Yeah.
And decide
Yes.
and decide that they can go, and then you can just let them off. You don't have to go to the bother of putting up the wire at that stage. Then you're ready for action straight away.
Actually, I think if you have that done, Stuart, you're more likely to get the cows out if you have that little bit of prep done beforehand. Because if a farmer has to think, God, okay, the paddock is not too bad, but I have to go out and I have to get a wire up. Maybe the water needs to be connected back up again. That's probably off-putting. Whereas I think your recommendation in terms of if you have, and it's only a 3 or 4 hour strip, a 3 or 4 hour section, they'll be back in again. If you have that done prior to it, I think that's key. Because if you haven't, it's much harder to get the cows out if you have to prepare on the day that you want to leave them out, Stuart.
Okay, and then just one last thing then, Padraig, about that. Just you mentioned the water there. How critical is the water in this on-off situation in the month of February, in your opinion?
To be honest about it, if they're out for 3 or 4 hours and weather conditions are kind of moist, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's when they're out maybe for longer periods, that's when maybe farmers need to be more conscious of getting water. Now, I'm not saying that cows don't need water. I'm not saying that at all, Stuart. But when you're trying to get cows out at the start, you know what I mean. You might get away with, just maybe if they're out for 3 hours and get them back in again, you might get away with it, But we're not suggesting that cows don't need water, not at all. It's just for situations like that, you might just get away with it.
Yeah, and once they have good access in the sheds as well, Padraig, so once they're finished milking, obviously the peak period for consumption of water is immediately after milking.
And good access in the yard, I think that's key. But that's important now, because cows will come in after maybe eating that allocation of grass that you gave them, and they may. So you have to have good access to water when they do come in. So that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose it's like you said with the wire as well earlier. It's about being prepared for it, I suppose. And don't let the water availability in the paddock stop you from going grazing for the couple of hours.
Absolutely, yeah. It gives you a bit of time. It gives you, look at that. I'm very, very conscious that it's a really, really busy time of the year. So I think, preparation is key in my book. If you have these little bits and pieces, as much as is possible done like that, you definitely have a better chance of getting those cows off for a couple of hours. And I suppose it's just to remind ourselves again why, it reduced cost, you will better production. So there's a lot of things going if you can get those cows out to grass for a couple of hours when the weather allows. And I suppose the other thing which I didn't mention is, Stuart, whether the cows are inside or outside, it's really, really important that they are fed well. Absolutely. You know what I mean? That's one of the key things that I'd like to get across here today is that, cows are well fed, whether they're inside full time, inside and outside. That's key.
Yeah, so that's basically the power of grass is phenomenal, but if we lose access to the grass, then we have to fill the gap again. And I suppose the potential is there, as you said, to save on concentrate, but we're not promoting cutting down the concentrate just because they're out of grass. You need to have it at the right level for associated with the grass intake that you have. And intake is everything, I suppose. Knowing what that level of intake is, being aware of what cows are actually consuming, and making sure, as you said, that they have full and plenty basically at all stages, bar maybe an hour just before going out to graze, so that they are keen when they do get out.
When they get out, that's important, I suppose. They have a bit of an edge to their appetite, I suppose, when they go out, that they're, that they start eating straight away, isn't it?
So sure, we'll leave it at that, Padraig. Thanks very much. There's some great tips there for people for the month of February anyway, and we'll be back again in March with more tips in relation to the month of March. So thanks for coming on today, Padraig.
Thanks, Stuart.
That's all for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Padraig O'Connor for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Stuart Childs, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.